Okay, well, good morning, everyone. I'm John Clegg, Program Manager of the Office of Highway Safety out of the Department of Safety, and I would like to welcome you all to the first day of the New Hampshire Impaired Driving Virtual Conference Series that will begin today with the first presentations being conducted from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Now, before I continue, I ask for a moment of silence for Officer Bradley Haas. Thank you. Officer Haas will truly be remembered and missed. Now, for those who are new to attending this conference, there is a wide range of attendees to include dignitaries, legislators, law enforcement, prosecutors, and other important highway safety partners and stakeholders. Impaired driving continues to be a very real problem on New Hampshire roads. I'm sure you've all seen the news. Law enforcement has seen it. Many of our partners have seen it. It's a real problem. To put things into perspective, in 2021, there were 73 alcohol and/or drug-related crashes, which claimed 83 victims. That's 70.3% of the 118 fatalities that occurred in 2021 that were impaired related. 70.3%. Also, of the 118 fatalities that occurred in 2021, 35.6%, or 42 victims, died as a result of an alcohol-related crash. Also in 2021, drug tests came back positive for 58 operators involved in fatal motor vehicle crashes. In 2022, preliminary data is currently showing that there were 96 victims of an alcohol and/or drug-related crash. Again, that's a really huge problem when we look at the percentage here. 65.8% out of the 146 fatalities in 2022. 65.8% of the 146 fatalities in 2022 that we had. So that's, even though it's gone down, that number, that percentage has gone down a little bit, it's still a major problem out there on our roadways. And just to let everybody know, as of today, preliminary fatality data shows that we have, for the year in 2023, shows that we have 122 fatalities thus far. So when you compare to the same period last year, the number of fatalities, we're basically on track to have the same number of fatalities that we had in 2022, 146 in 2023. And certainly we don't want that number. So, we have these conferences every year. We're trying through education, enforcement, outreach, messaging, to do whatever we can with our partners, the community. We want to empower motorists as well to really help us with this issue, because this data that I just mentioned certainly points to how serious this problem truly is, and the reason why it is so important that we collaborate during this impaired driving series and in the future as we continue to work together in this partnership to save lives. Now, at this time, before I introduce this individual, it's Assistant Commissioner Edwards, and I just first like to thank him because he is a busy man as Assistant Commissioner for the Department of Safety, and he always has time, it feels, for the Office of Highway Safety to address highway safety related issues. He's attending many of our meetings with our partners and whatnot, and he's actively engaged and plays a very important role in the guidance of this office. So I just want to thank him very much. He's very passionate about highway safety. And with that being said, he was not able to make this conference, but Tyler Dumont, our PIO at Department of Safety, and him were able to put together a recording. So I'd like to play the recording at this time.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Eddie Edwards, and I'm an Assistant Commissioner here at the Department of Safety. And on behalf of the Department of Safety and our Office of Highway Safety, I want to welcome you to our 2023 Virtual Impaired Driving Conference. You know, I am incredibly proud of the Office of Highway Safety and the incredible work they're doing. I'm incredibly proud of our partnerships with each and every one of you. And equally important, I am incredibly proud of the work that you do in your communities each and every day to improve road safety. The unfortunate reality for us is that we still have much work to do. You know this and I know this. Every crash is tragic. It changes the lives of victims, their family, their friends, businesses, our community, and our state. It's 100% preventable. In 2021, 118 people were killed on New Hampshire roadways. Of that, 70% of those crashes involved alcohol and or drugs. 70%. Every impaired driving crash is preventable. I don't like absolute terms any more than you do. But in this area, they are preventable 100% of the time. There is no excuse to be behind the wheel of a car driving on our roadways, impaired by alcohol or drugs. This is preventable. We need to send this message in our enforcement, in our education, in our conversations with our friends and family members, in our businesses, in our schools, and throughout government, that driving in the state of New Hampshire under the influence of drugs or alcohol will not be acceptable nor tolerated. Your partnership in this area is incredibly important. So thank you for being here. Thank you for helping us deliver this message across the state and in our communities and in our families. And most importantly, I want to thank you for always bringing the energy to this conference. So please, today, listen, learn, share, let's grow, let's strengthen our message. And in 2024, we will be back live, face-to-face, being able to fellowship in one room. So I'm really looking forward to that. I hope you are as well. Please enjoy the conference. Please share. Please bring your energy again. And so on behalf of the Department of Safety again, thank you so much for the incredible work you're doing.
And with that said, I'd like to thank again Assistant Commissioner Edwards. Important words, certainly to go by. Next, I'd like to introduce a person that I've known for a number of years, who's been very important to this office and helped us out in many different ways, whether it be helping to initiate enforcement efforts throughout the state to address issues such as the impairment issue that are currently happening on our roads. But in many other ways, you know, he has taken on important roles to help and provide guidance to our office as it pertains to, you know, legislative guidance or anything else that we might not be aware of, being citizens and not involved completely in law enforcement. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Lieutenant New Hampshire State Police Lieutenant Chris Storm. Is currently the commander of the Special Services out of headquarters in Concord. And he's just got such a huge resume. But I can tell you this, his institutional knowledge is vast, and it's because of that Lieutenant Chris Storm is our office's enforcement liaison. So, Chris, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, John, thanks for that. Thanks for that introduction, and good morning, everyone, and thanks for participating today in the virtual New Hampshire Impaired Driving Conference. It's truly an honor to speak with you today as we gather to address this critical issue that affects safety and the well-being of our great state. Impaired driving remains a pressing concern, and it's our collaborative responsibility to find effective solutions to reduce this dangerous behavior. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the Commissioner's Office for their support. John and his staff at the Office of Highway Safety, they work tirelessly to help combat impaired driving, and all of our community partners out there, we really truly thank you. To all the troopers, police officers, and deputies that are participating, that go out there every day to help keep our roadways safe, I just want to say thanks to you as well. I would also like to publicly say thank you to someone that's become very, very important to the Office of Highway Safety, and that's Dave Martinelli. He has done an awesome job leading the DRE program and the drug evaluation and classification program. He's brought that program, and you're going to hear about that here shortly. He's brought that program full circle, and so I just want to say thanks to Dave. So today we come here with a shared purpose to explore some, very innovative approaches in reducing impaired driving. By joining our forces together as a community, as groups, we can make such a significant impact on the lives of our fellow citizens and ensuring safety to our roadways. One aspect that you're going to hear about later in the week is that we must address the issue in our state of our refusal rates, and how our refusal rates to these post-arrest tests is so important. And it's so disheartening to witness the growing refusal rate amongst these individuals that have been arrested for DWI, which are so crucial to determining the levels of impairment. These refusals pose serious challenges to law enforcement today, and it hampers our ability to enforce law enforcement, especially when it comes to drug-impaired driving. We must strive to find ways to reduce the reluctance and to emphasize the importance of being able to get these tests to ensure public safety. So one of the other things is, with the impending legislation of legalization of marijuana, we must proactively consider its potential impact on impaired driving. While we have to respect the democratic process, it is our duty to thoroughly assess the risks associated with this change. We must collaboratively develop strategies, promote responsible usage, and prevent impaired driving incidents related to the marijuana consumption. Law enforcement today is going to play a pivotal role in combating impaired driving. They are the frontline defenders who tirelessly work to keep our roadways safe. It's crucial that we motivate and empower them to go out and actively intervene, stopping this behavior before it claims lives, innocent lives. We need to ensure that our officers have the necessary tools, training, and resources to effectively detect and address impaired driving incidents. By doing so, we can foster a culture where impaired driving is not tolerated, and its consequences are felt by all in our communities and in our state. So I believe it's our collective responsibility to make impaired driving socially unacceptable within our state. By sharing our knowledge, best practices, and experiences through this conference and other modes of communication, we can motivate each other to act and make meaningful differences when it comes to impaired driving. So what I ask of everybody here that's participating, please participate, please ask questions, please generate discussion, ask the questions of the speakers, and if you have anything that can help us combat impaired driving, any ideas or anything, we are all ears to try to make this a more safer place to live and to drive. So thank you everybody for participating today, and thanks for everybody that works to combat this problem out here on our roadways. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you very much, Lieutenant Storm. Really appreciate that presentation and those introductory words. Certainly important to go by. Chris, Lieutenant Storm mentioned some of the things that, we're trying to do out there to alleviate some of the problem that's happening with impairment. I can tell you, as an office, for 2024, we say that as our federal fiscal year starts October 1st in 2023 through 2024, we are planning really to have as much involvement from all of our partners, but especially law enforcement throughout the state. We're going to be working with all 10 counties to conduct regional DUI saturation efforts, along with also conducting corridor enforcement efforts along many of the high crash corridors throughout the state. So if anyone out there is listening to this, thinking, what is the Office of Highway Safety really doing? What is law enforcement really doing? We are already started the coordination of that and the planning of that to kick off. In fact, the Rockingham County regional DUI saturation is going to happen November 22nd through the 26th, with the press conference being kicked off tomorrow, I believe at 11 o'clock. So just want to let everybody know that we talk about the issues, and I know some people ask, what are we doing? That's exactly what we're doing. And I think it's going to have quite an impact with law enforcement's visibility out there, and also all of our other partners helping in conjunction with that, with outreach, messaging, and whatnot. So I appreciate that, Lieutenant Storm. Thank you very much. I just have a few things I just wanted to mention before we get started. If anyone needs a certificate of attendance, please email Paul Ruggiero. His email's in the chat box. I don't know if you put that in the chat box, Paul, but certainly, you can email Paul on that. Also, all sessions will be recorded and will be sent out to you after the series to review at your leisure. That's kind of nice. Nice thing about virtual meetings sometime. Although in federal fiscal year 24, it's going to be calendar year 23. Our plan is to have a conference, an impaired driving conference, where everyone is there, similar to the ones that we used to do at the Croponi Center, if people remember that. So it'd be nice to see everyone face to face and whatnot, and have a conference at a physical location. So as an attendee, make sure your video is turned off and you're muted. You will only see the presenters. There will be time for Q&A at the end of each presentation. Please submit your questions through the chat feature on your screen. And with that being said, we'll go to our next presenter, who I'm proud to introduce. He is actually out of this office, the Office of Highway Safety. Dave Martinelli, sorry, Dave, State of New Hampshire Drug Recognition Coordinator. He's going to talk a little bit of the state of the state and DRE program, technological advancements, and just talk a little bit about Dave, his bio. Dave Martinelli, I'm having a hard time with your last name. Sorry, Dave. Is currently the State of New Hampshire Drug Evaluation and Classification Program DECP Coordinator. He's been serving in the position since January of 21. During that time, he has reinstituted in-person training program-wide. In 2021, he coordinated a full slate of training to include 4 standardized field sobriety testing classes in the Basic Recruit Academy, 4 A-Ride classes, a drug recognition expert instructor course, and finally a drug recognition expert candidate class. Drug recognition expert stands for DRE, which completed its field certification in Winston-Salem, North Carolina at Hope Counseling and Consulting. David Martinelli attended the 107th New Hampshire Police Academy in 1995 for the Dover, New Hampshire Police Department. During the following 24 plus years, Dave Martinelli served in various positions within the police department, culminating his career as Lieutenant Patrol Shift Commander. David Martinelli became a certified DRE in 2000. Shortly thereafter, became certified as a DRE instructor. He served in those positions for approximately 10 years. David Martinelli retired in 2019, went to work for Portsmouth, New Hampshire Police Department, and then has maintained that position since his retirement. And we are so fortunate to have Dave Martinelli working for the Office of Highway Safety. As you can see from what I've read, he actively involved in a training, try to increase the number of DREs throughout the state and all those other trainings throughout the state. Behind the scenes, many of you don't know, but he's involved in many other things that we're working towards to enhance the DRE program and some of the other things that he's working on. So Dave just doesn't stop moving. I appreciate everything he does. And with that, Dave, I hand it over to you.
Morning, John. Thank you for the introduction. I appreciate being here. I am the DECP coordinator for the state of New Hampshire, and I'm going to put on a little slideshow here to go through that. Okay. As the DECP coordinator, it is NHTSA funded and IACP managed. In those programs that we run standardized field sobriety testing in the Recruit Academy. And with that, we run standardized field sobriety testing refresher class, advanced roadside impaired driving enforcement, drug recognition expert training, DRE FST instructor training. One of the things that we do with that, IECP offers the opportunity to do a DRE instructor course, an FST instructor course, or a combined course where we run both. So all of our instructors are qualified to teach DRE or FSTs, which is a very nice option. We do the DRE field certifications. John mentioned that we went to Hope Counseling down in Winston-Salem, North Carolina last year. This year we happen to be going out to Mesa, Arizona, which will be nice. There's also a DITEP training, drug impairment training for educational professionals. We haven't had a call to teach that here in New Hampshire, but it's one of the programs offered by IACP. And also a phlebotomist training course. We're looking into that where we have the opportunity. What that allows is police officers to train to become phlebotomists so that they can draw their own bloods, which is part of the DRE evaluation process. We're looking at that and seeing if we can make something happen. All right, the field sobriety testing is what occurs roadside. The police officer gets the subject out of the car. That generally consists of the HGN, one leg stand, and walk and turn. And there are other additional alternative testing. It's taught to new officers in the police academy, used to determine impairment. It's a 24-hour course that, again, we teach in the police academy. And what I would say on this is Troopers Sam Provenza, Trooper Chris Wall, and Trooper Lauren Herview spearhead that completely. They handle it from beginning to end, and I couldn't do the program period without them. They take care of so much. It's taught by a DRE FST instructor. And we also do a refresher class. We offer 2 refresher classes. In the first 2 years that I've been here, we've actually canceled one of the refresher classes due to lack of attendance. This past year, we taught 237 students in field sobriety testing in the basic police academy. The A-RIDE, it's a 16-hour course taught by taught 2 experienced officers by DRE instructors. The difference being across the country, there's been a lot of states that have said that they want to put A-RIDE into the basic recruit academy. And part of the problem with that is you have to have some experience so that the student police officer can understand, like, I saw this person who I thought was impaired, but I didn't have enough training to pursue it. That's really what the A-RIDE class brings in. It needs to be taught to experienced officers. Deals with DWIs that aren't necessarily or specifically alcohol is the main impairment. The officers learn signs and symptoms of drug impairment. They're required to complete a field sobriety testing in front of an instructor and pass that to a satisfactory level. Written test in the class. The course is in high demand. We teach 4, and this year we had 144 students. Last year we had 150. 53. DRE class, it's a 72-hour classroom. Again, one of the things that IACP offers is the DRE training is a 2-day preschool and a 7-day DRE school. They also allow the class to be taught what they call combined class. So you combine it all at one instead of going to 2 separate schools, dates and times type of thing. It's all one class, 9 days. 5 quizzes, 2 tests, 16 field evaluations. And that's where we talk about, we go down to North Carolina or Mesa, Arizona this year. The student has to conduct 6 hands-on evaluations, 6 observations. As they go through their 12 evaluations, they have to have a 75% confirmation rate, which is done through toxicology. And they also have to have evaluated or opinionate 3 of the 7 drug categories. There's a final knowledge exam on the last day of the field certification, and it's generally an all-day test. The students are in there all day in the conference room of the hotel taking a test. For recertification, once you're certified, you get recertified every 2 years. During that period, you have to conduct 4 evaluations with 75% accuracy. You have to accumulate 8 hours of drug-related training. And one of those 4 evaluations has to be observed by an instructor so that we're still sure that you're able to complete the evaluations properly. During 2023, we had 237 students in the FST classes, 144 students in A-RIDE. We had 13 DRE students that were able to be certified this year. We had 4 FST DRE instructors certified. We started with 5. First day, one of the kids got COVID, couldn't come. So we ended only with 4. Conducted field certifications in Winston-Salem. We held 4 in-state evaluation nights. Those are really key to helping officers maintain those 4 evaluations that they need to get. Sometimes they can't always get them all on the road themselves, and so they need a little help. So we hold evaluation nights where we go down to Manchester and we go to a church and we coordinate bringing impaired subjects in from the street and put them through voluntarily go through field sobriety testing in the DRE program or the whole DRE protocol. It works really nice. I push out numerous trainings so that they can have the opportunity to get those 8 hours of training that they need. DRE evaluations this year, we had 65 evaluations completed year to date. That kind of is a low number. And I think it really relates more back to our 68% refusal rate on administrative license suspensions. Once that DWI, whether it's drug or alcohol, once they come in and the officer reads them their ALS form, if they refuse at that point, a DRE is never even brought into the process. So because of I believe we're second in the nation with our 68% refusal rate, that really hinders us being able to get evaluations. We have a total of 68 evaluators. This year, there was 1 refusal and 1 stopped participating. One of the things we did this year in our efforts to find additional tools beyond a DRE and A-RIDE student or just the basic police officer was to fight marijuana in this state. Every state around us has marijuana. Recreational use is legal. So therefore, there's lots of people on our roads driving under the influence of marijuana. We were looking for a tool to help us in that efforts. One of the things we looked into was oral fluid testing. We tested 3 different products. The Sotoxa mobile test system is this product here that we tested. Very nice piece of equipment. It has a printer that comes with it, and you were able to print out the test ticket. You take an oral swab and you swab it on the cheek and gum. You put it into this little contraption here. You fit it in there, and then in 5 minutes, the screen lights up and will give you a readout of the 6 different drug categories that it covers. The Draeger system, unfortunately, I don't have one, but it looks very similar to this. And again, it's a simple swab that you swab on your cheek and gum and put into the machine. The difference between this one and the Draeger is the Draeger has you crack a little, as you close it, you crack a little vial of fluid, and that helps. And then you just read the test tickets on the side. This particular one happens to be a Stat Swab 3, sold by Micro Distributing. This product here, this is the swab that you use to put in your mouth. One of the problems we found with this particular model was you have to get that whole swab saturated with saliva. And if you know anything about people who are drug addicts and constantly using drugs, having a lot of saliva in their mouth generally is not one of the things that happens. So we had some difficulty doing that on this particular test. We conducted our test comparing the oral sample to urine and the DRE opinion. I'm aware of in the nation, I believe Michigan and Indiana conducted tests, and their results were with the Sotoxa were significantly higher. And I think that's points to the fact that we were using urine as our baseline as opposed to blood, which they used because of the way marijuana metabolizes in your system. So we ended up not really considering any of them at this time. We think that I'm going to continue to look at them, and we're going to continue to evaluate them. Here's our results that we got when looking at it. The Sotoxa was only 38% accurate. The Draeger was 31, and the Stat Swabs was 22. If you look at the small little box on the right-hand side, it was a small test. When we went down to North Carolina and we're conducting our field certification evaluations, we utilized these pieces of equipment as we tested our people at the facility. And so I understand certainly from a scientific point of view, it's a pretty small study, but it's all we had to look at then. If you look at the chart there, you see that Sotoxa was only accurate on 27% of the marijuana that we hit on. And again, that might have been related to the fact that we're comparing it to urine versus blood. And you see the other stats there. At the end of the day, we didn't feel comfortable recommending any of them at this time. I did complete a further report on this, and it has a lot more information than you see here. If you'd like that, you can shoot me an email, and I can certainly mail off that report to you. But we'll continue to look at it. I think it's coming. It's a technology that's coming and advancing quickly. We just didn't think it was ready for prime time yet for us. Another new project that I did this year, NHTSA offered a drug strategies grant that's being managed by Toxel. I applied for it on kind of a whim, thinking that we're a small program and we weren't going to get anything. And we ended up getting the grant. We were able to order 85 tablets. And what that's going to provide us the opportunity to do is I'm going to give tablets to all of our DREs, and they're going to use software from the Institute of Traffic Safety and Management Research, ITSMR, which offers a comprehensive data collection and reporting tool that improves the efficiency management and monitoring of the state's drug recognition program. What happens currently is we use an officer will complete what's called a face sheet right there, and they do that by hand, and that's part of their official report. What the ITSMR software does is it took that face sheet and put it from top to bottom in sequential order. There's 12 steps in the DRE program, and the officer is able to use the tablet, mark it up, and type on it, draw little pictures where needed, and the program will generate a PDF of that face sheet. One of the things we run into is once the officer does that on paper, at some point later, they're supposed to go in and put that into DRE data, our tracking system. And we find that people aren't always as diligent about doing that. So when we go to the new ITSMR software, what'll happen is they'll complete that face sheet online, so to speak. And as soon as they save it, it now goes into the database, and I'll be aware of it that day, where currently I'm not aware of an evaluation done by a DRE until they put it in DRE data. So there's a lag there, and this is going to solve that problem. It's the program that we're going to get from ITSMR has mobile and web, so you can do it on a tablet, or you could sit down at your computer and type. But it's real-time data collection. And like I said, as soon as they save that, it comes out and it saves the PDF to the database. What's nice about it is it also has draft written across it until it's approved. So there's another thing that's we're going to benefit from with having a better system to approve all the reports and see if they can get the draft off their face sheet. One of the nice things about the ITSMR software is it's state-specific database. I'm in the process of working with them right now. I sent them all of our motor vehicle laws. I sent them all of our towns, in what county they're in. We're designing what we want for road names. Some of the nice features are there's check boxes like, were you on duty when you conducted this evaluation? Was this a call out? Was this an A-ride referral? All those things are going to be added to our database, which is really going to hopefully improve our data collection. That's the goal. Let's see. Coming in the future, we're going to hold another full slate of classes at the Police Standards and Training. We don't do any road shows. Everything we do is held at our one training facility here in the state. And it's going to be the full slate where we're going to hold however many police academies they're going to hold. We'll hold that many field sobriety training classes. We're going to do 4 more A-ride classes. We're going to do another DRE instructor course, for which I've offered out to the surrounding states here in New England to come participate in that with us. We're going to do another DRE class, and we're going to go out of state again and do our field certifications. One of the things we started doing last year was recognizing our DREs and DWI people out there and sending them to national conferences. IPTM holds a wonderful seminar down in Orlando. And last year, the DRE conference was in Anaheim, California. And we were able to take 10 people out we took 8 and 2 others from the state went. And I think it's really important for our local people here to get some exposure to what's going on in the whole nation. You really get to meet with people and talk with people about how the DRE program is running in their state. They're all the same. The DRE programs are all the same, but it's good to communicate and work with other officers across the country. We're working on developing our own in-state field certification site in cooperation with Manchester and various churches in Manchester that cater to the homeless population in Manchester. That progresses well and really works on those in-state field certifications, an important part of our program. We're also working on a call-out system to include our local officers in that call-out system. Currently, there's a call-out system in the state, and if an officer anywhere in the state needed a DRE, he can call the state police, and the state police will send someone. That is currently happening and has been happening for years. Hoping to maybe get a system set up so that we can get the locals involved in that also. 2024 calendar, like I mentioned already, these are the classes we're going to offer. One might look at it and say, well, it's kind of a short training calendar. One of the things that people need to understand is my position here is a part-time position. So I'm not full-time, and most of this happens over the winter months so that I can get out and sail in the summertime. There's my presentation, and there's my contact information. My cell phone number, you can text me, call me anytime. And there's my email address. Again, if you email me something, I'm a part-time employee, so I'm not here every day. But I will check my emails and I will get back to you.
Dave, we do have a question.
Yes.
It came via email. The question is, I'll try and summarize it here. There's a standard 0.08 alcohol level for alcohol. Is there, or will there be one for driving under the influence of marijuana?
Well, I don't control the legislature and what they come up with, but let me say this: as the coordinator, I would not be in support of, personally, would not be in support of a per se, it's called a per se limit for drugs. And the only reason for that really is drugs affect people differently. Every person's affected differently by different drugs. And if you put a limit on it, that it doesn't really talk about it. It doesn't talk to impairment. In my opinion, currently the field sobriety tests work very well for picking up drug impairment on the roadside. It's a simple matter of if you're impaired by alcohol, marijuana, or cocaine, if you fail the field sobriety test, because our law states impairment to any degree, you are arrested for DWI. Personally, I don't think that having a per se limit is a solution to the problem. Okay. I guess that's my answer. I know that there are states that have it, but I don't think that's the direction we need to go.
Also, there's another question here, came via chat. How well does field sobriety evidence hold up in court?
We find that it holds up very well. As a DRE, when you go into court, generally you go through the process of being deemed an expert in your area as a DRE. We don't have problems on a larger scale. I'm sure that there's the officer here or there who might not be able to explain his field sobriety test in a proper manner, but it not holding up in court is not a problem, certainly on any type of scale that we're dealing with here in New Hampshire.
There's another one. Do you know if conviction rates are higher when a DRE is involved in the case? And what are typical impaired driving conviction rates?
I can only speak anecdotally to that point, where I do think that you have a higher conviction rate when a DRE is involved, again, because more times than not, they're being deemed an expert in their testimony. They go through the voir dire process and become deemed an expert. And anytime you can bring an expert into court, you have a better chance than you did before. I don't know what the typical impaired driving rate conviction rates are. I would have to seek that out from DMV or some other source. I don't have that information for you.
Okay, thank you. Did you touch on the tablets at all?
I did talk about the tablets.
All right.
Is there a question about it?
That's just a question if there was any computer recording of the data.
You manually put it into the tablet, or you manually write it down on a sheet of paper. Either way, one of the things that's happening now more and more is the body cameras that police officers are wearing are recording all this information. And already in a short time, we've been able to see, from a training perspective anyways, a lot of videos of live DWI, DRE evaluations occurring in the booking rooms of police departments all over the state, where that video evidence is really beneficial when you can see it. You know, go back to the old saying of a picture's worth 1,000 words. A video of somebody stumbling around the booking room trying to complete field sobriety test is wonderful evidence. And that's happening more and more across the state as more and more police departments get the video cameras.
Okay, thank you. I think that's it, unless anybody has any more.
All right, if that's all, I'm going to turn off my camera. Thank you very
Dave,
much.
thanks so much. Thanks so much, Dave. That was a great presentation. And, you know, he's just working so diligently trying to enhance that DRE program. Everyone knows what I mentioned at the very beginning with impairment, drug impairment being an issue out there on our roads. And Dave's really helping to enhance the number of DREs, trained DREs out there who will be able to detect that drug impairment. So that's hugely important. I also wanted to, Dave did mention the fact that top DWI, DUI arrest performers throughout the year, our top officers will be sent to a conference to enhance their knowledge of impairment-related information. And this is something the office has taken on because we want to reward those officers out there that are really working hard, that really are passionate and committed to removing the impaired driver from our roads, because there are a lot of sad stories out there that we have all heard. You know, I think it's going to really make a big difference if everyone's just committed to trying to remove the impaired driver from roads out there, for sure. So thanks so much, Dave. Dave does, as you see, he's part-time, but he works very hard to do whatever he can while he's here, and he's done an awful lot. We really appreciate it, Dave. Thanks so much for a great presentation. Next up, we have George Bishop. He is going to talk a little bit about driver alcohol detection system for safety. That's DADS. Talk a little bit about driver drunk and impaired driving prevention technology in the bipartisan infrastructure law. George Bishop is a private consultant engaged by the Automotive Coalition for Traffic Safety, ACTS, to expand opportunities for the testing and development of the driver alcohol detection system for safety. Again, DADS. Prior to his role as a consultant, George worked in various capacities within state government in the Commonwealth of Virginia for more than 38 years. His most recent position was that of Chief Deputy Commissioner of the Virginia Department of Motor Vehicles. He served as the Governor's Highway Safety Coordinator, overseeing the operation of Virginia's Highway Safety Office for nearly 7 years. While at the Virginia DMV, George was instrumental in establishing the first statewide partnership with ACTS to deploy DADS test vehicles through a NHTSA grant-funded partnership driven to protect Virginia. Prior to his work at DMV, George spent 30 years working in the Virginia legislature and also served as the executive director of Virginia's Executive Mansion. He is a former adjunct faculty member at Virginia Commonwealth University's Wilder School of Government and Public Affairs and a graduate of the University of Virginia. And with that, I present to you George Bishop.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you guys for having me. It's really nice to be able to talk to you guys. I am currently in Virginia, and I work here with the DADS program with the Automotive Coalition for Traffic Safety. And I'm just thrilled to be able to talk to you folks in New Hampshire about the driver alcohol detection system for safety, or DADS, which it's known as, and what we believe is going to be a game changer, really, in the field of impaired driving prevention. I want to be able to get my presentation up here, and I'm going to try and share it. So I have gone through this one time with the folks in New Hampshire, so I just want to make sure that I'm getting this right. So let's see. If somebody with access to the mic can let me know whether or not that's presenting on the screen, that would be nice.
It is.
Awesome. That's great. All right, let me put it in slideshow mode here and we'll start. All right, does that look good?
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. Great. Well, again, thank you guys for having me today. We were talking about before the meeting, Paul and I were talking about the impaired driving fatality numbers in New Hampshire this year and last. And I think we all know, well, first of all, this is not confined, as you know, to New Hampshire. This is, unfortunately, the situation in most of the states around the country. And then, obviously, we had gone from back in the, in 80s and 90s, and to where we were right before the pandemic. We had, particularly around 2014, really gone in a decline in terms of the numbers of traffic fatalities related to impaired driving, traffic fatalities in general, really. And but at the same time, while traffic fatalities were in decline, the percentage of the traffic fatalities that were related to impaired driving were sort of in a plateau state. They were 30, 33, 35%, pretty much everywhere. That wasn't changing. Fewer people were dying, but about the same percentage were dying as a result of drinking and driving. And then, of course, as we all know, those numbers started to increase again. And as they increased, the percentages of those that were related to impaired driving or drunk driving were still in the 30 to 35% range. And as we were talking about before this meeting, then you add onto it the proliferation of marijuana and other drugs and impaired driving in general. I heard a staggering percentage from New Hampshire that was somewhere near 70%, and that's just it's staggering. And all of these tragic loss of life situations are all 100% preventable, 100%, and we all know that in this conference. But the question, is really how can we deal with it? And obviously, and I commend everyone in law enforcement. The law enforcement community has been really the front line when it comes to fighting the impaired driving issue that we have on the roads. Having the laws, yes. 0.08, yes. But you've got to enforce them, and enforcement really was at the ground level was what was really bringing us our numbers down. But as I said, we've kind of hit this area where we realized the gains from 0.08, and then we started to move back up again. And so around 2006, there was a group of folks in the automotive industry who asked a simple question. What if there was a vehicle integrated technology that could limit the driver's blood alcohol ability to drive? It could limit the driver to a blood alcohol level less than 0.08. You know, what would that look like? What if there were a technology that could be developed that would seamlessly, flawlessly work to detect the driver's blood alcohol level, and if that blood alcohol level was above the legal limit, would prevent that person from driving. So what would that look like? You know, it would need to be integrated into the vehicle at the time of mass production, right? It would need to work flawlessly. There would really, it would have to be accurate and precise, and it would have to work every single time. With over the course of a 20-year useful life of a vehicle, and you know, if you're like me, probably more like 25, because I mean, new vehicle costs these days, right? So, and it would have to be accurate, precise. It would have to work quickly. There would really be no room for error. And so a group of people in the automotive industry began to think about and talk about this issue and present this idea to lots of folks, particularly in NHTSA, and you know, it originally met with well, healthy skepticism, I would say, but they persevered. And the reason they persevered was this. The Insurance Institute for Highway Safety had estimated that if there were such a system that was integrated into new cars and was available and used, that we could prevent 9,400 deaths per year in the United States alone. And think of what that number would be worldwide. 9,400, really, and let's not sugarcoat it. These are violent deaths that occur simply because a person was going from point A to point B and was interfered with by a drunk driver, or the drunk driver did this to him or herself, or the people in their cars. That 9,400 people lives would be, their deaths would be prevented if we had this type of technology that could be developed and was installed in vehicles. So the idea of the DADS program really was born with this notion in mind, that we could save thousands of lives every year. And not only that, let's talk about the non-fatal injuries too. I mean, we always talk about fatalities, and we should, but it's more than just fatalities, as we all know. There are serious injuries that prevent people from living the lives that they had lived before the crash. Injuries that eventually people will get their previous life back, but you know, it might take years. Not to mention the amount of, and I never like to talk about money, but there is both a societal and monetary cost to traffic fatalities and traffic injuries, and that related to the impaired driving. So it almost goes without saying that whatever the investment that could be made into this by the public and private sector would certainly be worth the effort if we were able to establish it. This was agreed to ultimately by the federal government, and federal government through NHTSA and the automotive industry entered into a public-private partnership to begin the development of what we call the Driver Alcohol Detection System for Safety, or DADS. And I just want to read this slide because I think it's important to talk about the word that's underlined there. The Driver Alcohol Detection System for Safety is a passive alcohol monitoring system that will seamlessly detect when a driver's blood alcohol concentration is at or above the legal limit and prevent the vehicle from moving. Okay, so there are a couple of things in there that I want to unpack when I'm talking about DADS, because they're important. First of all is the word passive. Passive can be defined different ways by different people, but in my mind and in the mind of the program, passive means this. I get into the car, I close the door, I've begun the process of really, but when I unlock the door or when I open the door, the vehicle knows that there's, you know, activity going on, the power starts up, there's all kinds of things that happen in a vehicle when you unlock the door, when you open the door, when you sit in the vehicle, that the car knows that it's getting ready to be used or that somebody's in the vehicle. And at that point, that's when the monitoring of the driver's breath should begin. And it should begin without the driver knowing it, and it should begin without the driver having to interact, and it should take samples and then provide a blood alcohol content level by the time the driver starts the vehicle and begins to engage the vehicle to drive. So in that brief period of time, the vehicle should have taken a breath sample that did not require the driver to provide it and read the driver's blood alcohol content from that sample. To me and to the program, that's what passive alcohol monitoring means. And when it is implemented, that is how we see it happening. Well, let me get back. The other thing I wanted to mention about this is that the technology is actually reading the blood alcohol content. It's policy that tells us what's above the legal limit. So in 49 of our states, the legal limit is 0.08. In one of our states, the legal limit is 0.05. So there has the technology is going to tell you what the driver's alcohol content level is. It would be, you know, something else in the vehicle that would then determine, you know, what the level would be in order to prevent the car from driving. Obviously, we all know that in commercial vehicles, it's not 0.08 or 0.05, it's 0.02. I mean, there's a zero tolerance in most states for, you know, people under the age of 21. So there has to be an ability for the vehicle to also take that information and then know how to then, you know, engage or not engage in terms of what the alcohol content says about the driver's ability to drive. So there you go. It was always envisioned that the driver alcohol detection system for safety should progress with two different tracks. One would be the breath system that I've been talking about and that I will talk about most of this presentation, because the breath system is the one that is the most far along in terms of development and deployment. But the idea was always there are two ways that we could really go about this, and we're really not sure which one would be the best one long term. So let's go about them at the same time, and let's sort of figure it out along the way. Well, there's the breath system, and that's the one that I've been describing, that you know, takes a sample of the breath when you get in the vehicle. Then there's the touch-based system. And the touch-based system would be one that, and originally I think the idea was that that it would work sort of behind the press to start button. So if you can imagine a press to start button that had built into it a laser monitoring system, that when you press it, that it would at that time take a reading of the blood alcohol concentration from under the skin surface and shine an infrared light through the fingertip, and it would get your blood alcohol reading that way. It's since been determined that actually the thumb is not, or the fingers are less viable than actually this section of your palm right there. And I don't know if I'm actually showing, but there's a section of your palm, I can't remember the name of it, but it's kind of where the thumb meets the palm. And that is the sort of the sweet spot in terms of being able to get a blood alcohol content level with the infrared light. So probably it's a different thing, like maybe a gear shift or even in the steering wheel itself. But that is also being developed. So we have a breath-based system and a touch-based system. Both are DADs, but they're being developed at the same time in the same laboratory, but sort of on different. They're at different stages of development, and I'll get into that in just a minute. But as you can see here from this picture, one of the things that I do want to show you is sort of where the breath-based system, where the actual collection area is for the breath. So you can see that then in this picture that the breath-based system, the sensor itself is located in the steering column, just above the steering wheel. There are a couple of places that we're testing right now. The steering column just right there. Also, sort of on the side, on the driver's side door, we found is a good location for it. And in a few slides, you'll see that in some commercial applications with trucks, just because of the way that the truck cab works, that just above the driver, sort of like where your sun visor would be, in that area is actually a good location for the breath collection area. So where are we then on development? I'm pleased to report that we are really on track for by the end of 2025 to be able to hand off to vehicle manufacturers and safety system suppliers for vehicle integration an advanced version of the breath technology. So you'll see here on this timeline that we've sort of named them, there are various generations of this, sort of like cell phones, right? So you've got, Gen 1 was first developed in 2010 and all the way up to Gen 3.3. Generation 3.3 is what we have right now. That's being deployed and being tested and test deployed in vehicles. And by the end of, or really by the probably spring of 2024, we're going to have generation 4.0. Now, if you look at the top of this slide, it may not be really all that obvious, but those from baseline all the way across to Gen 3.3, you'll see what the various stages of the sensor actually looks like. And then there's this purple line. And then after that is Gen 4.0, I'm sorry. That purple line is where we take it from what we call directed breath sensors to passive breath sensors. Now, I spent a lot of time at the beginning of this talking about what passive meant, because passive is where we need to be when we send this to manufacturers. Because where we are right now and where we have been from the beginning of this program is what we call directed breath. And directed breath has required less and less and less breath sort of along this timeline that I'm showing you. But this is what directed breath is. Where we are in Gen 3.3 and all of the vehicles that have the DAD system integrated into it right now are using Gen 3.3. And Gen 3.3 requires what we call a directed breath. And that directed breath would be the amount of breath, basically I tell folks, that it would take you to blow out a birthday candle or two. Not like 20, and certainly not the amount of breath that you would use in a breathalyzer, not at all. But like a couple of birthday candles, and sort of like that. But it does require that directed breath means that there has to be an interaction between the driver and the technology, one that the driver initiates. That is not passive yet. That is where we are, but that's not where we need to be, because we need to be a passive, right? So everything that we're doing right now in terms of the deployment of Gen 3.3 is all being done with a breath that is being provided by the driver in a directed manner, much like a birthday candle. The Gen 4.0 is currently has been produced. It's on a tabletop model. We're putting it in what we call a test buck, which is sort of a like a driver's cockpit area that's built in the laboratory. All this, by the way, is happening in Massachusetts, not too far down the road from most of you in New Hampshire. Littleton, if you guys are familiar with this, the company is called KEA Technologies, and they are under contract to develop the system. Yeah, so 4.0, our plan, as I said, was that any deployments that occur sort of in the spring to early summer timeframe in 2024 would be with the new Gen 4.0, and that would be in a passive, a true passive technology. Where are we on the touch sensor? Well, the touch sensor has taken a little bit longer to develop, but the trajectory now is very sharp. There's been a lot of, we've made a lot of headway in the last 18 months in touch sensor development. At the outset, if you look over the generation 1, and I'll explain this before I get into this. So in order to do this, what both of these systems are doing is that they're looking for molecules of ethanol. And in a breath-based system, what they're doing is, go back to the breath-based, when you get in the car and you provide that directed breath, it's looking for two things. It looks for carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is what we emit, when we breathe out, and it's looking for a certain quantity of it because humans emit carbon dioxide at a certain percentage, and it reads that to determine whether or not there's a human in the car. And once it finds that you are emitting carbon dioxide at a level at which humans emit carbon dioxide, it knows, okay, this is a human. At the same time, it's looking for any evidence of alcohol or ethanol molecules. If it finds ethanol molecules, it then does the math to determine the percentage of ethanol to your carbon dioxide, and then that's what gives us the breath alcohol content, and that's how they know, whether or not you have alcohol on board and at what level. There's a really cool screen that we use, and when we go to shows and or impaired driving conferences, or state highway safety office conferences, that type of thing, and we show off the technology. If we can't bring the car with us, we have this desktop model, and it's built into a steering wheel, and it's hooked up to a computer, and when you breathe into it, it shows you the carbon dioxide in blue dots and then the ethanol in red dots, and it's really cool to see how the technology actually finds the ethanol and what it looks like as a percentage to the carbon dioxide, and then it tells you what your blood alcohol content is. Most of the time, we're in these meetings, people aren't drinking, so we'll get some hand sanitizer and blow across it like that. But so for example, we took it to a University of Connecticut football game, and there might have been some people who maybe had been tailgating out in the parking lot before the game, and they came by, and so they would register with alcohol on board, and that's that's a time where we can then say, hey, you should probably get an Uber to get you home. So I like to think that even when we go on some of these, when we show the public what's going on with this technology, we're trying to save lives at the same time. So that's where we are on the touch sensor. I think that the touch sensor, so it's looking, when we first started, it needed 40 laser chips for in 40 individual packages to find 40 discrete infrared wavelengths. That basically, you'll see there on the picture over Gen 1, it basically took up that whole tabletop. If you move across, we've now gotten it down to the point where we've got 4 tunable laser chips scanning the upper and lower range of the infrared. And so we've taken it from 40 lasers to 4, which is not only cheaper, but also reduces dramatically the size. So there's been a huge improvement in the size and really the functionality of it as well. And so we need to get to Gen 6 to move it to 2 tunable lasers to make it as small basically as it can be, so that it would fit inside maybe a gear shift or a lot of cars don't even have that, right? So maybe the dial that you have to turn, or the steering wheel, or something that you touch. It's got to be able to fit inside that. So we're getting there, but that'll take maybe another 18 months or so. So what has really been happening outside of the technological development? Because we have demonstrated the technical feasibility of the technology, and we've demonstrated the ability to make it. We have some partners who can build it, but where we need to be is we need to be able to make it mass producible or scalable in automotive quantities, manufactured to automotive quality standards. And as we've talked about with the touch base, and also really with the breath base, we need to reduce the size of it, or the form factor, so that it's easily integrated. We've done that with the breath base. We know that works. So we're still working on it with the touch base. But so along the way, we were given this opportunity that really just sort of, a lot of people worked really hard on this, and it could ultimately be a game changer, because in the bipartisan infrastructure law, and there's Bill, he's only Bill, and he's sitting there on Capitol Hill, and he became a law. And in that law, which is also known the Infrastructure and Jobs Act 2021, there was this section that did the following, and I'm going to read it because it's important what the actual law says. It says, the first section says this: DMS. DMS is driver monitoring system. It says that a driver monitoring system that passively monitors the performance of a driver or a motor vehicle to accurately identify whether that driver may be impaired, and to prevent or limit the motor vehicle's operation if impairment is detected. These are all things, by the way, that in the bill they're saying that it requires the Department of Transportation to issue a rule for, right? So the Department of Transportation is instructed by Congress through NHTSA to develop the rulemaking to create a driver monitoring system and an ADS, or an alcohol detection system. And I'll read the alcohol detection system. They must create the rule to passively and accurately detect whether the blood alcohol concentration of a driver of a motor vehicle is equal to or greater than 0.08%. And if so, to prevent or limit that motor vehicle's operation if the blood alcohol concentration is above the legal limit. And then finally, it is also that NHTSA is also required to create the rulemaking for a combination of the systems described in A and B. So we've got, NHTSA is currently in the process of creating the rulemaking for manufacturers, and then to give to manufacturers the rules for providing to the general public those two technologies, systems, or a combination, and a combination of those. And what's the timeline of that? Well, this is I know it's a busy slide, but I put the important dates in red so that you can see them. The upper line is the time frame that's mandated for NHTSA to complete their rulemaking. And it's kind of complicated, but really they kind of have to have their last final compliance date deadline for doing this is Monday, the 15th of November, 2027. Their first deadline is actually the 15th of November, 2024. And I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, wow, today's, so that's less than a year from today. That is their first sort of deadline. But then they get like a 2-year and a 3-year compliance date. And so, if they have really until the 27th, November of 2027 to create this rulemaking, which they then turn around and send to the manufacturers. And then the manufacturers have until November of 2030 to do what they're required to do. And what are they required to do? They're required to provide to the general public these technologies as an option for, in their vehicles at the time of manufacturing. So we have really a mandate from Congress through the bill to both have rulemaking done by NHTSA and have the manufacturers provide this technology to the general public, and really by the end of 2030. So we're about 7 years out from the farthest compliance date possible, although all of those other dates are viable dates. The one that's the farthest out is 2030. So it really not too long, in the not too distant future, we should have this technology available. But we've got some work to do. And because we have some work to do, we have enlisted the support of the various states. And what are the states doing, and how is it that the states are playing such a vital role in this technology? Well, there are really two things that are vitally important in terms of being able to have this technology not only in place and available, but used by the general public. The first of those I've talked a little bit about, and that's the technological development of the system. It just has to work. It has to work. It has to work accurately. It has to work precisely. It has to be quick. It has to withstand all of the various beatings that a car takes over the course of 20 years or so. It has to work in all weather conditions. It has to be, as accurate at 20 below as it is at 110 with, 90% humidity. These are all things that it has to do. And the technological team is helping with that. And to an extent, the states are helping with that as well. But the other part of it that is equally important is consumer acceptance, consumer confidence, and consumer trust in the technology. So to that end, we need to have some partners in helping us. first we have to have partners that will help us with test deployments. And then we have to have partners that will help us in rolling the concept of this technology out to the general public, to show it to them, to explain it to them, to allow them to see it and feel it and test it and begin to, in their own minds, begin to think about how it would work for them, and the idea of, you know, the truly brilliant plan of being to virtually eliminate drunk driving and how that might impact society, and begin to have them accept this type of technology built into a vehicle, taking their information, you know, their blood alcohol content passively, and then having it tell the car whether or not they're allowed to drive. They need to you know, think about that, talk about it, consume it, analyze it for themselves. How do they feel about it? And then come to the conclusion that it is an acceptable trade-off for them, for the lives that it would save. So these are the things that we hope to establish when we establish partnerships with states. So we created what we call Driven to Protect, and Driven to Protect is a program that we when we partner with states and the state's highway safety offices. NHTSA has allowed state highway safety offices to consider the DADS program as a use of their federal grant monies from impaired driving grant funds to create programs in their states. The first one was in Virginia. And then we had Maryland come on board, and then most recently Connecticut. And I hope to be able to announce in the not too distant future that we have a fully signed contract with the state, you know, west of the Mississippi. Let's just put it that way. And I'm constantly talking to states about the opportunities that are there to partner with us and to provide a Driven to Protect program in their states. So what do we do? What are the states actually doing with Driven to Protect? Well, the first thing that it does is it allows us the opportunity to expand our fleet partnerships and trial deployments. And so what happens in a state is that part of the contract with the state is to find a fleet that would be willing to have a portion of their fleet outfitted with the DADS breath technology. The way we do that is we will get one of their vehicles, and if it's a vehicle that we have not retrofitted, and by the way, all of this is because it's not coming out mass produced at this juncture, we have to sort of retrofit the technology. When we do, we really build it in to the car. It looks, I mean, you'd have to know it's there in order to see it. We figure out where the technology has to fit sort of behind the panels, and then we build the little snorkel device that collects the breath and either put it in the driver's door or on the steering column, and you almost kind of have to know that it's there. A lot of people don't even see it when they get in the car, but we put those in the vehicles. And then the thing that we do in these test trials that would not be in a mass-produced sort of public iteration of this technology is that we put a data collection device in the trunk or somewhere in the vehicle. And that data collection device sends data to us that we monitor the system. So we know how it's working, when it's not working, how often it's taking samples, how, that type of thing. We do it with commercial drivers or with state employees, or where a situation where there is a strong belief that it's unlikely that the driver has alcohol on board, right? So in that scenario, it's almost like an alcohol, no alcohol test, because, you know, if there's any alcohol on board in one of these test deployment situations, we're a little skeptical of that. We need to make sure that as much as we need to be able to measure someone's blood alcohol content around 0.06, 0.06, we also need to be able to measure to see whether or not we're getting false positives. The worst thing in the world would be for us to roll out a device, a technology that gets a substantial percentage of false positives and prevents somebody from going someplace. I mean, whether it's as important of getting to the hospital or whether it's just getting their kids to the, you know, soccer game on time, or prevents them from going to the grocery store, or whatever the thousands of reasons you get in a car. If the public finds that they're prevented from going somewhere because the car thinks they're drunk and they're not, then that's going to be a problem. They won't want it. They'll turn it off. They won't use it. They'll tell the manufacturers, don't give me a car with this because I don't want it. So testing with a commercially driven vehicle is very good for us, because there's sort of a presumption, if we get a positive reading, that the system has done something wrong. Many of these trial deployments will have a secondary device in the car, so that if the driver does encounter a positive reading, that they are then supposed to then blow into a more standard sort of breathalyzer, so that they can give, you know, not to prevent them from driving necessarily, but to give us an idea. Okay, our system is saying you have alcohol on board. We don't believe it. Let's give me the, you know, let's try with the breathalyzer. And that's just sort of a way for us to say, okay, and also to kind of provide to management, right, of the fleet, hey, this guy really wasn't, you know, or this, he or she was not, you know, didn't have alcohol on board. It was just an error of the system. And then we figure out why that error occurred. We've been able to determine a lot of things that we didn't know about what might provide a false reading. And we've been able to build some of that into the algorithms. It's all been extremely helpful in determining, you know, how well the system is working. The value of the data that we collect from these fleet partnerships that we have, where we've deployed the technology through NHTSA funding through the states, is really immeasurable. We've thousands and thousands of hours, hundreds of thousands of miles, years worth of data through these partnerships in Virginia, Maryland, and now Connecticut. And so it's been invaluable, really, and it's really helped us move the needle in terms of the precision and accuracy of the device. And I will say this, so that's the real world experience, right? That's the naturalistic study that up in Massachusetts, or I guess down in Massachusetts for you, we've been doing the laboratory studies, right? We get human subjects to come in. We in a hospital setting, we dose them. We know the level to which we're dosing them. We know the level of blood alcohol content that we expect to get from that dosing, and then we get them to interact with the device. And so through laboratory testing, we've been able to really, really hone in on the precision of the technology. We then have taken that same human subject testing idea and put it on the road with human subjects in the driver's side of the vehicle to see how the technology interacts with a person that we know is dosed in a vehicle. Obviously put them in the driver's side. In the passenger side. But I laugh about that. But the next step of that is actually now beginning, where we've been able to find a closed road course. I think that, I'm pretty sure it used to be a military, not base, but owned by the military. and it's no longer in use. And we've been able to get a closed road course where we can actually put dosed passengers in a driver's side to get some readings there, and that's actually starting up in the next couple of months. So there's a lot of stuff going on that's what I call sort of laboratory testing, and then there's the real world testing or the naturalistic studies, and that's what's happening with our fleet and trial deployments. I'm going to see if this works. This didn't work during my test, but this, if it works, shows you kind of how a driver in a fleet interacts with the technology with the directed breath that I've been telling you about. This is if it works, this is a driver with Schneider Trucking. We still are doing test deployments with in Virginia. See if it works. So the driver's getting in. Of course, he's gonna belt up here in a second. And now his device was sort of installed on the dashboard there. It's on the right, and he's going to blow into it. And I'll show you what the directed breath is really. There's directed breath there. There's directed breath there. And then it pops up. Testing complete. He's good to go. So hopefully you guys saw that. But it is really that. Oh, sorry. Okay. It's really that simple. Now, I talked a lot before about building awareness, and this really is such an important part of what we do when we have the state programs, because on the one hand, they provide us, we do it is really two tracks with them too. They help us with the test deployments, and on the other side, they help us with building awareness and acceptance with vehicle owners. And how do we do that? Well, we go to events like the ones that you see here. In Virginia, there was a safety day at Fort Belvoir. We took the vehicle there, and we were able to allow hundreds of military personnel to interact with the vehicle and the technology. We went to the Virginia Black Business Expo. There's a picture of the UConn home football game. We do that kind of thing. We work with the states, beer festivals, wine festivals, NASCAR events, you name it. We work with the state highway safety offices to determine, what are some events in your area, in your state, that you think that you would like to showcase this to, and that would be beneficial for everyone. And then we go there and we show them and the public gets to interact with it. And it's great to see sort of the light click on when someone gets in the vehicle and they see it, and they see how quick it is, and they see how it works. And 98% anecdotally, 98% of the one-on-one, interaction that I've had with the public when they see this is just so positive. And a lot of people are like, if my, I wish that my dad had this in the vehicle, 15 years ago, and maybe he wouldn't have gotten that DUI, and that kind of thing. People's lives are really impacted by the decisions that they make in regards to alcohol and driving. We all know this, but it's not just about preventing fatalities, although that is the huge reason for it, but it prevents the other aspects that people really, I hate to say ruin their lives, but they, as we all know, create really bad situations for themselves when they make that poor decision, and then they're caught, and they're adjudicated, and they have to suffer the consequences. And if most people don't get into a car or thinking that later today I'm gonna drive drunk, but obviously they do, and so a passive system like this could really prevent some of those situations. And here's favorability, right? So Virginia drivers, when this is from a survey that we did not too long ago. 73% of drivers who admit to drinking after driving hold a favorable view of dads. I mean, to me, and those are the people who are drinking. That's great. That's really great news. That means that 73% of the people who are doing what we don't want them to do have a favorable view of this technology and will use it. One of the other things that we do is we try to mobilize key messengers and stakeholders to really to emphasize the program. If I can, if I go to a group and I speak about dads, that's one thing. But if I can get the governor of a state, which you see here in this picture in the top right corner, that's Governor Ralph Northam of Virginia, as previous governor of Virginia. He's sitting in the dad's vehicle right there. This was part of an announcement that he made about the program. When you get elected officials, members of the legislature, Congress people, the press comes, the people pay attention. It's really, we get those key messengers or stakeholders. We go to, like I said, we go to state highway safety conferences, whether national ones or local ones, presenting to folks such as yourself to get the word out about the DADS technology, about the importance of the technology, and the fact that it is on its way and will be hopefully in vehicles, by the end of this decade. It's vitally important that we talk to the young drivers, right? I said by the end of this decade. So when I speak to a high school class, 7 years from now, they're probably going to be kind of looking at their first new car or getting close to a new car that might have this technology built in. I want them to know about it. I want them to want it. We want them to expect it, to tell, maybe not tell, but by, through their desire and through their purchasing power to say, I want to use this. I want this in my vehicle. So we have done a couple of things. We have young drivers that come to our lab. We have young drivers that come to our office in Leesburg, Virginia. We take learning experience trailer that we built to various events that have young people. And we've built what we call a discovery hub. Now, I'm going to quickly go over this because I know I want to leave some time for questions, but I think this is a great concept. The pandemic really upended so many things, and one of the things that it upended was in Virginia, we had made a plan with a local high school in a county in Virginia that was going to send some of their a STEM class. I can't remember which class it was, but it was a science and technology class to the laboratory, and we were going to kind of show them, how the technology is built, what's the science behind it, what's the science behind how alcohol affects the body, all of those kinds of things. It was going to be this really great class, and we were going to do it for all of these schools in Loudoun County, Virginia. Well, then the pandemic hit, and what happened to that. But what we did with it was say, look, not to be deterred, there's a lot of this that we could build into an online module, and we created something called the Discovery Hub, and it allowed us to create this education module that we were going to do in person, but put it online. And we were then, instead of only being able to offer it to the students in Loudoun County, Virginia, we were able to partner with the Department of Education, and they were able to adapt it to their standards of learning, and we were able to offer it to all of the high schools in the Commonwealth of Virginia through this Discovery Hub. And it really became maybe even a bigger aspect of that program because of it. So we have this Discovery Hub. What was done in Virginia can be replicated and done in other states. And so it's really part of a package that we offer to any state who wants to be a part of the Driven to Protect program. And then finally, there's earned media coverage, and I kind of touched on it a little bit, but it's not just, you know, having a governor at a press conference, although that's very helpful. But we've also asked secretaries of transportation to write op-ed pieces that get put in major newspapers. We've had lots of local and even national media attention whenever we go to a new state, or when, let's say, a governor or a congressperson or something writes one of these, then all of a sudden we get lots of calls from local media or even from national media to do pieces on the technology. And as you can imagine, after the mandate came out, you know, there was a slew of interest in it as well. So earned media coverage is a big part of what we try to concentrate on too when we have programs with the states, because it really is it's a force multiplier in terms of getting the information out. I'm gonna end there. I don't know if there's any Ted Lasso fans out there like me, but you know, I believe and believe, and I think that we need to be able, when looking at impaired driving, and really zero in particular, just overall, we need to dare to dream it and work to achieve it. And I do believe and believe, and I do believe that this technology in a few years is really going to be a game changer when it comes to impaired driving. And I hope you agree. My email address is there at the bottom of the screen. I'll also put it in the chat. I could not be more thrilled to be here with you guys today, and I want to thank the folks in New Hampshire for asking me to be here. And at that point, I think I will just end and take some questions.
Yes, George. Thank you very
Yes.
much. Thank you very much. We do have some questions.
Great.
The first one is, oh, I hear my voice there.
Yeah.
How is the passive breath alcohol detection system accounting for the potential presence of passengers rather than the driver that has been drinking?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so you remember when I was talking about it looking for carbon dioxide. So it does that. It looks for sort of carbon dioxide and the levels of carbon dioxide that it reads. There's also something that's called a dilution factor. And the dilution factor is that it is ascertaining how far, basically, because all of this stuff sort of, you know, all of these molecules dissipate at some point. As you can imagine, if I were leaning in and blowing something like that, my carbon dioxide is going to be much greater than if I were sort of back here and blew. And the farther away from I get from it is the greater the dilution factor is. And so somebody that's sitting to my right and a passenger side or in the back seat, their breath is going to be so diluted by the time that it is picked up, if it is even picked up by the device, that it would not accept it as an acceptable sample. It needs to have the dilution rate needs to be at a level at which it's comfortable in saying that I'm comfortable that this is a strong enough sample that I can tell you what your blood alcohol content is. And if it doesn't get that, then it won't do it. And the other part of that is that if it's getting it from me, from here to my computer, which is about the distance that it would be, anything from the passenger side is going to be so diluted by the time it hits it, it really won't even add to it. So the answer to the question is that it really doesn't impact it at all. But it really is a great question, because it's one that's on the minds of lots of people. I get that a lot, and if we were sitting in the car together, you would see, yeah, it doesn't impact it at all. But it's a great question.
Another question, would the device need to be calibrated on a regular basis?
Right. So that's another great question. And the answer to that is no. This is not calibrated. It's not it's basically, it's using infrared light. There's nothing that needs to be calibrated in it. It's not like a breathalyzer that needs to have calibration on a particular, every so often. It really isn't it's not a calibration kind of technology. So no, it doesn't need that.
This kind of piggybacks on the last one. Are these devices as accurate as the devices that are currently approved for state interlock programs?
Yes, and in some cases more so. Yes.
I heard that by identifying driver impairment, the driver monitoring system in the infrastructure bill was supposed to identify drowsy driving as well, or perhaps other form of unsafe driving. Is that correct?
Right. So yes. So driver monitoring systems. It's great. It's a great question, and thank you for asking it, because it's an important part of this, and it's one that if I have time, I'd love to get into. So I'm just going to delve into it real quick here. So driver monitoring systems are monitoring the driver, or once they are actually doing that, right? Once they get into a car and they begin driving, the driver monitoring system is monitoring their activities to determine whether or not they are capable of being a driver fit for being on the road. One of those, they monitor things like, head, if their eyes are facing forward, I think, a driver generally, if they're doing their job right, they perform certain functions, and one of the things is that they'll move their head left or right. Their eyes will look this way, look at the mirror. They can determine whether the eyes are looking straight ahead, or if the eyes are looking down to the right at a phone or whatever. They can also determine whether they're drowsy, if their head's dipping, or if their eyes are starting to shut. The thing that the driver alcohol detection system does is that the driver monitoring system might determine whether or not somebody is displaying traits that one might associate with being drunk. Okay. The alcohol detection system is determining whether or not that person is drunk before they get on the road, before they drive the car. Once you're a driver and I'm monitoring your behavior, it's already a little too late at that point. So I want to know whether you're under the influence of alcohol before you actually put the car into drive. Now, once they get on the road, then the driver monitoring system takes over and starts to look for other things, like, are they playing with their phones? Are they paying attention? Are they drowsy? That's what a driver monitoring system does, and that's how it differs from the driver alcohol detection system, if that makes sense. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, that was it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, it's been my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much, George. Really appreciate it. Great presentation, very informative. Of course, this state, New Hampshire, I'm sure many states, certainly this technology could help states minimize the potential of impaired driving crashes in the future. We're all about that for sure. So we're looking forward to this type of technology coming out. And if there's anything we can do as a state that you might need help with, or information from, or just feel free to, reach out to the Office of Highway Safety. You have our contact information, but thanks again for a great presentation. So this brings us to the close of the first day of our impaired driving conference. I just want to let everyone know, just a quick reminder that tomorrow will be day 2 of the series, starting at 11 o'clock again and running through 1 p.m. We've got some great presentations Darby Van Amberg of the New Hampshire State Police Forensics Laboratory is going to talk a little bit about the toxicology laboratory, state of the state. And then we have some presentation on data from our FARS analyst and our very own Paul Ruggiero. And then we're going to have another presentation by Paul Ruggiero talking a little bit about data and the crash data mapping system. So we got some great presentations lined up for tomorrow. I would also like to remind all attendees that the recordings of these presentations will be sent out to you for review at your leisure. And just a little fun fact, historically, the Office of Highway Safety has conducted this impaired driving conference or series since the early 1990s. And typically during this time of year, just before the holiday season, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, just to get the message out to all to help out in any way to reduce impaired driving crashes. You know, every year during this time, we have a number of fatalities that occur. It's over the past 3 years anyway, you know, we probably average 4 or 5 fatalities. So it's a big issue to really get this message out, especially to the motoring public. We've been working as an office, getting on radio stations and whatnot to talk to the motoring public, all the listeners of these radio stations, to really help us. Just want to thank, special thanks to Paul Ruggiero for your efforts, Paul, in putting this together. Always just so well done and really appreciated. And I would be remiss if I did not thank Art Kinsman, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administrator for Region 1, and his team for all their guidance and support for the funding that they provide to the Office of Highway Safety to be able to implement many projects, enforcement projects, outreach, messaging. All those projects really help us to minimize the potential of these impairment-related crashes that are occurring in the resulting injuries and fatalities as well. So, you know, lastly, I'd like to thank all the partners here listening on this conference call. Without you, really, there is just no office, agency, institution, organization, or partner that can reduce crashes and the resulting injuries and or deaths alone. So we certainly appreciate all the support that you give us, your commitment, your passion, so that we can work together to make a difference. So we really appreciate it. So tomorrow we'll see everybody at 11 o'clock. Have a wonderful day. Be safe. Thank you. Bye-bye.